The lobby of the luxury hotel glimmered beneath the chandelier's soft glow, polished marble floors reflecting the steady footsteps of arriving guests. Behind the front desk sat a young receptionist, her posture neat yet hesitant, as if every movement carried the weight of shyness. She avoided lingering eye contact with strangers, speaking politely but softly, her voice barely rising above the hum of the fountain nearby. It was just another ordinary evening, until the sleek car pulled up outside and the staff straightened with quiet anticipation. The billionaire, a man who carried authority in the way his shoulders squared and his silence commanded attention, entered with his elegant mother at his side. The mother, though striking in her presence, carried a gentle sadness. Her world was silent. She was deaf, and though her son cared for her deeply, he often struggled to bridge the gap between his demanding empire and her quiet needs. Guests usually greeted her with awkward nods or forced smiles, but rarely with true understanding. That night, however, something unexpected unfolded. The shy receptionist, with trembling fingers and a nervous breath, greeted the woman in flawless sign language. Her hands moved with grace, spelling words of welcome and warmth. The billionaire paused, stunned, his mother's eyes lighting up in surprise and gratitude. For the first time in a long while, his mother felt seen and spoken to directly, without him as a translator. The receptionist's cheeks flushed as the older woman responded eagerly in signs, a lively conversation blossoming across the desk that no one else in the room could follow. For the billionaire, it was more than courtesy, it was connection. He had never expected a stranger to speak his mother's silent language so fluently, let alone with such gentle sincerity. His gaze lingered, a flicker of admiration softening the edge of his normally guarded expression. As the exchange unfolded, the receptionist tried to remain professional, but her heart raced beneath her uniform. She wasn't accustomed to being noticed, especially not by men of power and wealth. Yet his eyes followed her every small movement, and she felt the weight of his attention in ways she couldn't ignore. He thanked her quietly, his voice low, almost personal, though the words were simple. That fleeting moment carried more weight than either of them realized. By the time they moved toward the elevators, the billionaire's mother kept glancing back at the desk with a smile that reached her eyes. The receptionist stood frozen for a moment, replaying the encounter in her mind. To her, it was a gesture of kindness. To him, it was something far more, an unexpected spark that stirred in the shadows of his otherwise controlled life. The next few days blurred together, but for him, the memory of the receptionist's hands moving gracefully in sign language lingered more than he cared to admit. He found reasons to return to the hotel, sometimes under the guise of business meetings, sometimes pretending he needed his mother's assistance. Each time, his mother seemed delighted to accompany him, her eyes bright whenever she saw the young woman behind the desk. For the billionaire, however, his visits were no longer about convenience. They were about her. The receptionist, though aware of his status and his marriage, found herself caught off guard whenever he appeared. His presence was magnetic, overwhelming in its quiet intensity. He always approached with a steady stride, but when he looked at her, the hardness in his face softened. He would ask small questions, about her day, about where she had learned sign language, and she, nervous at first, would answer in hushed tones. He discovered she had grown up with a deaf younger brother, which explained her fluency. Her compassion had been born out of family, not training, and that touched him deeply. Soon, his questions grew longer, and his visits lasted well beyond the boundaries of casual politeness. He would linger by the desk, leaning just a little too close, his hand brushing against the counter as if testing how near he could be without overstepping. She told herself it was harmless, just conversation, nothing more. Yet her pulse betrayed her. Every word, every look, pulled her deeper into something she couldn't name. One evening, after escorting his mother to her room, he returned alone. The lobby was quiet, lit only by the muted golden lamps. She was tidying the desk when he appeared, his suit jacket folded over his arm, his tie loosened. "You make her smile," he said softly, his voice dipping into something more personal than gratitude. She froze, the words settling into her like warmth and warning all at once. She tried to respond with polite detachment, but the sincerity in his tone unraveled her resolve. The nights that followed grew bolder. He began requesting small services that required her attention, finding excuses to keep her nearby. Once, While handing him documents, her fingers brushed against his, and neither pulled away. That fleeting touch burned into them both. Soon, stolen moments replaced professional exchanges. Conversations in quiet corners stretched into hours. Glances became touches, and touches turned into something far more dangerous. She wrestled with guilt, whispering to herself that he was a married man, that nothing good could come of this. Yet when he leaned close, his voice hushed and urgent, confessing that he hadn't felt this alive in years, her defenses crumbled. He made her feel seen, chosen, treasured, things she had never known. The hotel became their stage, its walls bearing silent witness to a connection that crossed lines neither of them should have stepped over. The first time they kissed, it was not planned. He found her alone in the corridor late at night, her shift nearly over. Their eyes met, and the silence between them broke like fragile glass. His hand reached for hers, trembling with restraint he could no longer hold. She should have stepped back, but instead she leaned forward, drawn into him. The kiss was brief, desperate, forbidden, and it sealed the descent into an affair that neither of them could undo. The affair quickly became a secret rhythm threaded into the days. What began as stolen kisses turned into hidden rendezvous in empty hallways, hurried embraces in staff-only corridors, and long, lingering nights when he claimed late meetings but spent the hours with her instead. Each meeting deepened their bond, but with every step closer, the shadow of consequence grew darker. At home, his wife noticed the change. The man who once came home with predictable patterns now arrived later, sometimes distracted, sometimes oddly distant. She caught the faintest trace of unfamiliar perfume on his shirt collar one night, a fragrance too subtle and too deliberate to be her own. She said nothing at first, testing him with questions disguised as casual conversation, but his answers were clipped, his smile rehearsed. In her chest, suspicion bloomed like a thorn she couldn't pull free. The receptionist, meanwhile, carried her guilt like a hidden wound. By day, she kept her professional smile intact, answering calls and greeting guests. By night, her conscience tormented her with reminders: he was married, his life was bound to another. Yet when he touched her hand, when he whispered words of longing she had never heard from anyone else, the guilt gave way to need. She told herself it was temporary, a fleeting secret that would fade before anyone noticed. But deep inside, she knew secrets always surfaced. The billionaire's mother, though she never confronted them, began to sense something shifting. She watched her son's eyes follow the receptionist with a softness she hadn't seen in years. She saw the receptionist blush too easily, her hands tremble just slightly whenever she signed in the older woman's presence. Though the mother said nothing, her silence was heavy, her gaze lingering longer than usual. She understood more than either of them realized. Whispers began spreading among the hotel staff too. Employees noticed the unusual frequency of his visits, the late-night conversations at the desk, the way the receptionist glowed with a nervous energy after he left. Rumors moved through corridors like smoke, unseen yet impossible to ignore. She tried to dismiss them, but her heart pounded with fear whenever co-workers exchanged knowing glances. One evening, his wife appeared at the hotel unannounced. She had followed him, her suspicions no longer containable. The receptionist's breath caught when she saw the woman, poised, elegant, yet burning with barely concealed anger, step into the lobby. The billionaire froze, caught between the two worlds he had created. His wife's sharp eyes scanned the room, locking briefly on the receptionist before shifting back to him with unspoken accusation. That night, the delicate balance collapsed. The wife's instincts were no longer whispers, they were proof waiting to be confirmed. The receptionist could feel the truth pressing down on all of them. The affair was no longer hidden in the shadows. The fragile secret that had bound them together was unraveling, thread by dangerous thread, and the fallout was inevitable. The silence in the suite was deafening after the confrontation. His wife stood before him, eyes blazing with fury, her voice trembling as she demanded the truth. Who is she? The question sliced through the air, her words heavy with pain. He tried to deny, to shield the receptionist from exposure, but his hesitation betrayed him. Silence was its own confession. Her hands clenched at her sides as tears welled in her eyes, the woman who had shared his home, his life, his vows now standing shattered before him. The receptionist, hearing muffled voices from down the hall, knew her world was collapsing. When he had entered her life, he made her feel cherished, chosen, but now she understood the weight of the choice she had allowed him to make. She had been the escape from his burdens, not the partner of his future. Her heart hammered as she packed her things quietly, her uniform folded neatly as though order could hide the chaos inside her. She could not face his wife's rage, nor could she forgive herself for being the cause of it. His mother, who had sensed everything long before, finally stepped into the confrontation. Her hands moved swiftly in sign language, eyes sharp with disappointment. She did not need to raise her voice, her silence and gestures spoke louder than words. You have betrayed two women. One with your lies, the other with your promises. Her gaze held both pity and reproach. For the first time, the billionaire felt like a child again, scolded not for mistakes of inexperience but for the deliberate breaking of trust. The wife, tears streaming, turned away from him. You've destroyed everything, she whispered, her voice cracking as she gathered her resolve. I loved you, but I will not live in your shadow of betrayal. With those words, she left, her footsteps echoing like finality itself. He reached for her, but she did not look back. The door closed, and the silence that followed was unbearable. The receptionist left soon after, slipping away without goodbye. She could not bear to see his pleading eyes, nor could she survive in a world built on the ruins of another woman's heart. The hotel felt empty without her presence, its once bright lobby now just polished stone and echoes. He returned in the days that followed, searching for her at the desk, but she was gone, her resignation swift, her departure final. In the end, the billionaire was left alone, surrounded by wealth yet stripped of what he desired most, connection, trust, and love. His mother's quiet disappointment lingered, her presence a reminder of the cost of choices made in shadows. He had gained moments of passion, but at the price of his marriage, his reputation, and the gentle soul who could no longer stay. The lesson hung heavy in the air: infidelity does not only break vows, it breaks people. The shy receptionist had shown him kindness, his wife had given him devotion, and yet he had betrayed them both. Alone in the silence, he realized too late that passion without honor is nothing more than loss disguised as desire.